Hello, friends. Welcome to our second podcast.
Bod. Oh my goodness.
Well, today we wanted to share a couple of books that we're reading and where those books have made us re-examine our world a little bit.
Always a good thing to do.
That is a good thing to do, isn't
Yeah.
it? The first one is, Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are? By Frans DeWaal. I'm going to pronounce that name. And The Immense World. This was sent to us by a friend, written by Ed Yong. And both these books have some pretty eye-opening things in them, some paradigm-shifting things.
I mean, there's lots of great books on animals and the different things they do. Even just think of learning about The Winter World by
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna say it
Bernd
now.
Heinrich.
Yeah, Heinrich. Yeah, just some fascinating things about not just the way the animals live, but these books are talking about. Well, with this one especially, they talk about the Umwelten of animals, which is kind of a specific animal's worldview and how they sense and perceive and where they live all makes up the way they experience the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So today we're going to take you on a journey with us as we explore some ideas about the Umwelten of, we're probably completely mispronouncing that German word.
I'm sure it is, but I don't know. Maybe it's not the way it sounds. You can correct us if you know.
that we've been presented with in this book, some ideas about animal intelligence and just how this can change our basic outlook in life. Animal intelligence. This has gone through a long history with different ideas. I think probably our tribal ancestors way back when probably thought of the animals, maybe the plants, and what we would consider inanimate things to be living, active parts of our world, sort of in the same way that we think of conscious things as living, active parts of our world.
Mm-hmm.
And then came along some different thinkers. I think he was talking about Aristotle, basically creating an idea of intelligence being on a linear scale.
Mm.
So here's humans, we're at the top of the scale, of course, and then there's some other animals like dolphins and some of the great apes that are down below us on the scale, all the way down to ants and fleas, which are at the bottom of the scale and have the least amount of this thing we call intelligence. But I feel like even with humans over time, we've started to learn that there are many kinds of intelligence.
Yeah, I was going to say, we need to define what we're talking about by intelligence, actually. I'm just thinking about octopuses, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Montgomery's The Soul of an Octopus is a fabulous, fabulous book because she really takes you into their world and you start to understand they don't experience things in the same way. And almost, their tentacles are like they're like separate beings that
they have essentially brains.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, we can't even understand something if it's outside of the way we're structured. So that's the first thing. The book, Are We Smart Enough to Even Understand How Smart Animals Are? Essentially, do we get it? Do we get other animals enough to even ask or understand how smart they are? So yes, essentially, octopuses kind of have brains in their arms that feed information to them, and each one is experiencing things and tasting the world, and it's incredible. So what is intelligence? Is it just being able to do what we humans do? I mean,
this is where you can't just have a linear scale, I think. We see that operating when we think about humans. we've probably all met people that may be rated very low on the human intelligence scale, but have other kinds of intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe emotional intelligence, the ability to be empathetic and read other people and to give them appropriate feedback to help them get out of their negative mindsets. We see very intelligent people who get locked into emotional ruts and can't seem to get out.
Or just don't have common sense.
Or don't have common sense.
Super smart, and then you go, well, why do you have, your dishwasher in front of, your closet? Or, just they're not even thinking, but yet super, super intelligent.
Yeah, there's this vast range where I think that this idea of an Umwelten being plural, is really valuable. So we think about being an octopus. And what if you see, with the idea of an Umwelten, we're not just trying to say what it would be like to be a human being an octopus.
Right.
We're trying to wonder for a moment what it would be like to actually be an octopus. And probably the best way we can do that is to kind of imagine what it would be like to be a human being an octopus. What if this arm and this arm and this leg all had minds of their own and kind of did their own thing sometimes, despite what despite what I was trying to do with my life, they were on their own, but worked cooperatively from my central brain,
which is
sometimes
located not in the same place
right. And of course, the octopus can taste with, I believe, its whole body basically, and maybe actually see with parts of itself beyond its. Or am I thinking of another creature that can see with parts of its skin?
There's so much that we don't even understand because we just don't have the capacity to understand it. So I guess we've made the point that...
Wait. Washing machine in front of
your closet?
Closet?
Yeah.
You mean when you design their house?
I don't know. I'm just thinking, it was a really lame thing. I didn't have any good examples.
I thought you were going to go different socks on each foot or...
Right. But I mean, we all know people who are super intelligent and brainy, and yet we look at them and we wonder, what were you thinking?
Yeah. Human intelligence is so funny.
Yeah. And a lot of times it doesn't strike me as very intelligent. That's where there's different kinds. Emotional intelligence is, I don't see it that much here in the standard American culture. Emotional intelligence doesn't seem to be a valued intelligence. So there's all kinds of different intelligences. And I think that's the important thing. We can't judge intelligence unless I think we had all these different factors and we also took in where we live and so many different things. So hopefully we've made the point clear, and hopefully maybe you can at least accept right now for the length of this podcast that there are different kinds of intelligence, and that animals, maybe even plants, have different capacities for experiencing and living and interacting with the world than we do as humans. And maybe they're more suited to what they're doing than we would be. The point is, intelligence is very difficult to define. And I believe that there's lots of intelligent creatures out there, not just human-based intelligence.
This is a basic problem, I think, with human intelligence and trying to talk about much of anything, is that often we use terms that we haven't defined. So we say intelligence, or we say consciousness, or cognition, and we think we know what we're talking about, but often we don't really have a definition for this. If you're a parent, you know this because your child at some point is going to ask you, what is, whatever it's going to be, what is intelligence? And then you'll stop and you'll say, well, wow, that's a big question. And I can give you maybe a standard answer that you might find in a dictionary. But if we're really going to think about this, that dictionary definition isn't going to do us a lot of good. And that's what this book, I think, has outlined, is this quest that humans have had to understand, are other animals around us smart? Or are they, as began to be proposed at some point in the scientific circles, are they just machines, basically, that work on very basic instinct? Or if you look at B.F. Skinner and the way the behavioralists, the way they explain things, but all of the ways that these were explained were pretty mechanistic. And the easiest way to think of a flea is that it's just a little machine. It certainly is not doing anything close to thinking.
Okay, we can't forget to talk about the slime mold thing. Is that what
Oh,
it is?
we sure won't.
Okay,
We sure won't.
okay.
Yeah.
But so what I want to say here is that it seems, unfortunately, that human beings throughout history, and this seems to be changing, and I'm sure not everyone followed this, but we are just trying to define how smart are animals on a human scale. We're not, where are they compared to us being the best? And I think that that's kind of faulty and robs us of a more multifaceted and rich experience of the world for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, as you say, we see this changing in the scientific community as experiments come out and show us that animals from all walks of life, including birds, that we're always bird brained, finding the birds maybe have a very complex cognition, especially some of the corvids. And corvids, if you don't know, are the ravens, the crows,
blue
jays. Yeah. That these animals have a more complex way of interacting with life than we thought. And I think that this starts to do something when we think of animals like that. And what I mean by that is that if I imagine that I am just the one intelligent animal, maybe I don't even think of myself as an animal anymore. I'm a human. I'm beyond animals. And I'm just
You're your own category.
walking around.
Animal, vegetable, mineral, human.
Human.
I want a t-shirt.
Oh, well, I wonder how many people would get it.
Born with it, right? Okay, sorry.
And I'm walking around in this world that is basically dead. That is a big machine operating, and I'm the only thing that is alive in that machine. It probably doesn't take much intelligence to think, well, that would be highly unusual, that we would have a trait that would just be in one singular species and all the rest of the other species would have a different trait. Because usually we see in any species, there's a lot of the shared traits. This is kind of the rule of when we look at animals in general, that there's shared traits. So the difference in walking around in a dead mechanistic world to walking around in a world that is alive. Now I hear the catbird and I think, instead of that just being a machine or something I don't pay attention to, what's going on there? I suddenly get curious about life. Is that bird, saying something to me? Is it saying, get out of here because I want to get over to the feeder, or I want to hang out with my friends, and you guys are being really obnoxious with your silly sounds you make all the time, as humans always seem to do? Or is it upset? What's going on with this creature over here? And to me, that's just a very different way of walking through life in general.
Well, and it also has certain values for human beings, especially I'm thinking of survival situations or being out in the woods and just enjoying nature. And if you're aware of the fact that, let's say, birds are saying something and they say different things, then as you're walking along, and it's peaceful and everybody's just kind of softly talking, and then all of a sudden you have your jays, blah, 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 then you know, hey, there's a disturbance here. And maybe it's far enough away that you don't feel it's you. Then you can say, what is going on up ahead? They're talking about something or to something.
Yeah.
And you can be alerted by all sorts of different animal sounds, and even the way that plants grow and communicate with each other has relevance to certain situations for we humans, we most important beings of all the entire world. Sorry, I know I love human beings, especially when I see us being our best selves, but I also see many, many, many examples of human beings being far less intelligent than many other animals that I witness in the world.
You know, I'm having an ongoing conversation with our good friend, family friend, Daniel. And we've been talking a lot about the scientific way of seeing the world. And he's someone who, I feel like there's not a lot of people that I feel like think like this. But I feel like he is this rare breed that actually thinks in the way that I believe science really is, which is that, the most that we can have in science is a theory. And a good theory, if you're holding a theory, you're trying to prove it wrong. Mm-hmm. You're always trying to gather new evidence. So you look at the world with curiosity. And I think that in the end, it may be that we can never go into the Umwelt of another animal. We can never know if another animal is conscious. I honestly don't...
How do we know that we're conscious, really?
Right. I don't really have real evidence that I'm conscious or that you're conscious or that...
This isn't just a big video game.
Yeah. I mean, if I really have to strip things down, there's not a lot that I have can say, this is truth or this is real. But then you see that the beliefs or assumptions that I'm going to make about the world make a big difference. So I can walk around in the world, again, not perhaps being able to really know what the truth is, but I can walk around in the world assuming that everything is dead and mechanistic. That's going to have a certain feel. The world's going to have a certain feel for me. I can walk around in the world feeling like everything's alive and filled with mystery, and that's going to have a different feeling for me. Mm-hmm. And that's that thing that I'm appreciating about Daniel, is that he is able to see that he doesn't know, right?
Yeah.
He can have a lot of evidence for something, but he won't go, this is 100%. Mm-hmm. Say this is 99.999. I'm really, really sure. Right. In fact, I'm going to live like it's this way.
Sure.
But always going to retain that curiosity. And to me, that is it feels so different when you live like that. It makes the world way more exciting.
Well, I think curiosity is really essential to true intelligence. And true intelligence, in my definition, is...
Right. So because I'm curious, I'm truly intelligent?
Do we have to have this conversation in front of people? You see what I have to live with here. I'm just saying that I agree with you that having an openness and a curiosity and a willingness to say, could this be wrong? Could this be different than I think it is a great way to interact with the world. And if we get to choose how we're going to look at the world, then why not choose a way that is richer? Why not choose a way that says, I don't really know, so I'm going to think and live as though it's one way, but I'm going to be receptive. I'm going to be inquisitive. I'm not going to stop and shut down and build walls and build cages and bars and put things in boxes and crystallize things. I'm going to have this world that's filled with mystery. It truly is mystery. We don't actually know. So there's always an element of mysteriousness. And then as we humans thrive on novelty, if there's always mystery, then there's always a little bit of novelty because you really don't always know. And I think to me that makes a more interesting life. And it puts in the world all these things, the First Nation people here in the United States of America, some of them, would call everything their brother and sister. And what a different way to think that the trees and the birds and maybe even the wind are family members of yours that are there with you to tell you things, to support you, to have a relationship with.
Feels different.
Yeah, I think it does. And I guess I'm sorry, I'm gonna.
No.
This is my octopus arm. Quiet. hey, hand. In this day and age when we're super connected and there's all of this really fast communication, I still look and I see people are depressed, people are anxious, people are fearful, people are not trusting. And I happen to wonder, too bad you can't do a giant experiment, what if you took half the world and they had a viewpoint of that inclusiveness, that animals and plants and maybe even inanimate objects were actually alive in the same way. And I don't necessarily mean cognating with brains that are the same or perceiving with perceptions that are the same, but essentially we're a part of a connection, a family. And you had half the world that believed that, and then you had half the world that didn't, and you could see, hey, does that actually maybe help us feel less alone?
Mm-hmm.
Less scared? I don't know. I just wonder.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, so I'm truly intelligent.
Yeah, in that way, it parallels our relationship with people, I feel like. Because we can, the same way I can look at the world and I can say that bird is just a machine and thus basically disregard it, I can put a box around you, anybody in my life, and when I have that box around them, I'm not really seeing them anymore. And I lose my curiosity.
Yeah, you stop asking questions.
Yeah. And I
Wondering.
think I stop falling in love because I've reduced you to just a box in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And then something vital is lost, the vitality, the life inside of you is lost. And eventually I can walk through all of life and feel like life is pretty
dull.
Yeah. Because, I've sapped the life out of it. And you talk about crystallization. I mean, this is what our brains do this in order to organize
Our very
things.
intelligent brains are so helpful to us.
But we're often not aware of that crystallization process. And then when that's happening, we believe the crystallization, the thought form that we put around something, is the reality.
And sometimes nothing can sway us from the belief, even if there's other, quote, facts right in front of our face. We will choose our beliefs. I'm sure we all know people who, no matter what you say to them, you cannot sway them from a belief that perhaps you can kind of see clearly is not serving them or isn't actually even accurate in the least. And I just think that's a great point that we do that with human beings. And that's maybe the first place to start, is realizing that we should unbox each other and ourselves. Instead of saying, I am this kind of person, that is what I think, this is who I am, we can say, okay, today, in this moment, I'm experiencing this feeling, or right in my life, I'm exploring this religion or interest, but to allow ourselves to not become crystallized and then therefore kind of brittle, because we can break if we don't think, if we identify ourselves as one way and then we suddenly act completely different, we can often mentally break.
Yeah.
And I think flexibility comes with curiosity, comes with saying, I don't really know. I'm just going to go with it and see. Let's talk about slime molds.
Yeah, I guess let's, because if we can start to see that the bird might be something we can interact with in a different way, we can take this further. And I think the science is getting pretty clear about animals and cognition, and there's a lot more going on than we previously thought.
Okay, so we're going to talk about slime molds.
Yeah.
Do you have to finish your thought?
No, I'm just going to segue into it.
Okay, can I first just tell the story from the book about, was it the ravens or crows? It was crows, right? On the college campus, who recognized the face. I just thought this was interesting. Since we're talking about birds, these researchers would capture and band and study the crows. It could have been ravens, but I'm pretty sure it's crows.
Yeah,
at any rate, same family member. And these crows would harass the people at the school. Usually it was the teachers who were then kind of doing it and showing the students. They would harass them when they would see them. They would fly up, they would dive bomb them, they would caw at them, but not so with the students who might have just been, standing by, not actually doing it. They would just hang out with them peacefully, but they would recognize, they did a study with a person wearing a mask, and even, 4 or 5 years later, even crows who hadn't actually been, let's say, captured and banded by the masked person, they would harass that mask years later. It's so amazing. I'm just amazed by that. And of course, you can argue however you want why they did that or whatever they're protecting. But the fact of it is, I guess, how many of us humans can remember people's faces after a number of years if you just see them once or twice? Or I don't know.
Facial recognition.
It was just a cool thing of, wow, they're really differentiating.
Which is neat, because what they're doing is pretty fabulous, because they are recognizing differences in human faces. And
not even their own kind.
And if you think about this for a second, we humans, we look at each other and we think, oh yes, it's very easy to tell a human face apart from another human face in general. Mm-hmm. But we look at two crows, or
we couldn't do the same for the crows.
Right.
If a crow was coming down and pecking at me, I couldn't pick it out from 20 other crows.
And so I remember in here they were talking about one of his another researcher that he was working with or affiliated with or talking with, was saying, well, of course the chimpanzees maybe won't be able to, they were working with some kind of monkey. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be able to recognize the difference between each other's faces, because they can't even recognize the difference between human faces.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And, that shows, again, a lack of our intelligence in recognizing that, oh, okay, dolphins probably can tell each other apart by their faces. Even some social wasps, they're doing research and finding
that was fascinating.
They can tell each other apart by their faces, make a little change on their face, and they don't.
Yeah, they're treated very differently.
But I sure don't look at a wasp and then I can't tell you any,
Right.
Any of the wasps around here if I've seen
the catbird that's there because they've been flying around. Is that the same one that was calling a little bit ago or not? I don't know. So much for our intelligence.
So we recognize things that are relevant to our species. Mm-hmm. That we're very bad at recognizing things that are not relevant to our way we're living in the world. And so there's not a lot of relevance for me in being able to tell one catbird apart from the other, and thus they all become one catbird.
To rule them all.
Right. And I can assume they all look alike, but they probably do not all look alike.
Yeah.
If I had a keen enough awareness and observation.
Okay. So I know I interrupted you.
Yeah.
So speaking of recognition and things, talk about the slime molds.
Okay. So we have the animals, and we're starting to see the science is saying, yes, there's intelligence there, but there's a point when we humans are going to say, well, there's not going to be intelligence in some forms of life. And most people would say, well, plants are not intelligent in any way. And mushrooms, fungus are not intelligent in any way.
I'm not one of those people, but I understand.
But as research comes out, I'm going to suggest it's going to blur those lines a little bit. And an interesting place this is happening is with this thing called the slime mold. And I recently did a short video on this. You could look back. I don't know, maybe I can link to it in the description.
Good luck.
And this creature is, it's fascinating in so many ways, but during much of its life, it's a single cell organism, a very large single cell.
Single cell.
But has nothing in it that could be called even a primitive brain. Nothing in it that could be called even a primitive brain.
Okay. Unless you just could find something in any single cell that would be a brain.
Yeah, I mean, there's I believe, what is it then?
Talking about the mitochondria? No.
No, this cell has many, maybe it's just nuclei that collect inside the single
Okay.
cell. But there's nothing, a nervous system, a brain feeds information through it. And
so there's no kind of central nervous system or any...
Right. Now, plants, some people are starting to argue, have some kind of a nervous system. And we might say
it's not organized like us.
Right.
But it acts similarly.
There's electric signaling
Right.
and chemical signaling going on that we're just starting to scrape the surface of. The same with fungi. But the place we're really...
I say fungi.
Fungi.
Because,
fungi.
You're like a
Because
fungi.
it's more fun.
I mean, I don't know technically what it really is. And that's completely irrelevant, but I just had to bring it up. Because there's a cute little joke. Anyway, never mind. Go ahead.
You want to do it?
No, I don't want to do it.
But the slime mold is interesting because this is a mobile being.
Mm-hmm.
So unlike fungi, which are kind of more just sitting there, they can do experiments with it. And they seem to be seeing something that resembles some sort of intelligence or memory. And specifically, it is a basic form of learning.
Okay, explain.
All right. So if I can remember these experiments correctly, they put the slime mold into a petri dish or container or whatever, and they have a couple of foods here. And one of the foods has a toxin that is not very good for the slime mold. And so the slime mold will go, they'll be interested in both the foods.
Wait, now you say they, but isn't it really just one?
It, yes.
Okay.
So it climbs in there, and it's going to, these are not the food sources, but I'm going to say there's a strawberry and a raspberry, and the raspberry's poison.
Okay.
And it tastes the strawberry and the raspberry, and then it sees the raspberry is toxic.
Okay.
And now, when it's put back into a dish, it doesn't try to eat raspberries anymore.
Whether or not it contains the toxin?
It should not be able to do this without a brain. It's learning.
Okay.
It's learning somehow.
So, but what I thought was really amazing was that when slime molds join together, now are they two slime molds or one slime mold?
This is when you think about cell division.
So you're saying you have the one slime mold and then you have the other slime mold that knows that the raspberry is toxic. And they join together and become whatever they become.
And these are big. I mean, these aren't little teeny cells.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
wow.
The one I saw was about this big.
Whoa. Okay.
Right. So now these guys can join together, and the whole thing will recognize
okay,
it.
so the one doesn't know, hasn't had experience, and the one does have the raspberry experience. When they come together,
I believe they can take a section off of it, and then that one will then know.
Cool. So then that one knows.
Remember somehow.
Yeah.
So we're having something that resembles memory. We're having something that resembles
in a single-celled
learning
organism
that has
nothing that looks like a
brain.
Wow.
This should not be able to happen. And a lot of scientists are looking at that and saying, no, we cannot call that cognition in any way. It's got to be some other explanation. But it sure resembles learning. And maybe it won't be. Maybe we'll figure out another mechanism that's happening there. But what I'm getting at here, the other interesting things this will do is it will it will collect bacteria, which it eats.
Yeah. This is also so cool.
It will collect bacteria, and it won't eat them. It will make a pile of them inside of it, and it'll carry it along until it finds a place that is very good for this bacteria, very beneficial, and it'll deposit the bacteria there and let the bacteria grow, and it'll hang out there, and then it'll eat the bacteria.
It's like gardening the bacteria or farming
It's essentially doing something that, again, I'm just going to say resembles agriculture.
Well, I mean, it is similar to ants and aphids is what it makes me think of.
Ants definitely are doing something there with the aphids. And it looks, let's just keep using that word, to be safe, it resembles animal husbandry, right?
Well, I mean, it definitely seems as though it's doing something intentionally.
Yeah.
I mean, again, can you use the word, it's thinking it through? But then I have to argue, do we humans actually think things through? There are some experiments that say that we actually, within our brain, make a decision. What is it? 7 seconds, 11 seconds?
7 to 10 seconds.
Prior to actually
consciously making the decision.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, and these experiments have been done with very simple things, deciding which button to push.
Yeah.
But very odd that I can think, okay, which one am I going to push? Which one am I going to push? And then I push it, but my brain already said the right-hand one 10 seconds before I made that decision.
So we see that happening, as researchers in the brain, and then lo and behold, we press the right button.
I grew up in the time when science was still largely seeing animals as machines. I think a lot of this revolution started in the 80s. So in my young days, animals were considered machines. I always felt they were more than that, even as a little kid.
Of course you did.
Of course. But that's still inside of me. And so that's why I'm being careful with my words. I'm saying it resembles this. Maybe we will find a mechanism that can explain what the slime mold is doing. But the point, I think, here is that as we dig deeper, whether it's into animals or slime molds or plants, we start to find things that we can't adequately explain with our current knowledge base. And that, again, infuses the world with mystery. And it makes us wonder a little bit what's going on. And that curiosity is, to me, so essential to not only having a scientific view of the world, but having an enjoyable view of the world. One where the world feels like it's this magical thing that you're engaging with. And to me, it's way cooler to look at an ant and wonder what its Umwelt is. What is its experience? Rather than to think of it as a small automaton that's just moving along and is dead.
I just have to jump in quick and say, are we searching for the mechanisms behind our own human actions? Because have you never been around or been able to control somebody else by what you say? We all have some people we know really well, a friend, where if you decide you're going to push their button, like, oh, I want to irritate them a little bit. I'm going to talk about politics because I know that gets them riled up. I mean, come on. All you have to do is mention something and then you change everything about them. I mean, we're animals too. Why are we not also searching for the mechanisms that make us do what we do? Because they are there.
And I think we are. There's some amazing neuroscience and cognitive science going on.
That would be fun to talk about sometime.
I'm
thinking about Ellen Langer and some of her experiments. Yeah. Anyway.
But do you have something?
No, I'm just thinking we also, if we're looking so hard for mechanisms in other animals, why are we also not looking for the mechanisms in us? Because we can't just take ourselves out because, we're going to remove ourselves.
That's a fun part of this, is to flip it around. Because if we're going to think of animals just as machines, there are some scientists that feel like there's no ghost in the machine here, right? This is all just mechanism going on in here. And it is a little fun to play with that. And, guaranteed, anybody, we could make a video and just talk about one thing. We could just talk about, let's say, Trump and the legal things he's going through. And we could do that intentionally just to create a reaction, and we would get
right. Oh yeah.
the reactions. We would get the two polarized reactions.
How can you get some interesting comments?
Yeah.
I know. Let's do this experimental video to see how many people we can get.
Probably on this channel, we would get a much higher percentage of people that would say,
for sure.
Oh, this is interesting.
I think I was thinking overall.
Yes.
We also respond to the stimuli around us. We also are beings that can respond, quote, mechanically.
Yes.
So I think I love what you're saying about let's for a while, for a week, try just saying, I wonder what else there is to this. I want to just unbox my wife, or I want to decrystallize my kids or my coworkers, and I want to just see them. I mean, become a behavioral scientist for a little bit, or somebody who is going to just be an observer and just watch, and instead of judging, say, how can I see a little bit more of the magic, a little bit more connection? How can I create a little bit more of that?
Just for a week, trying to bring the world to life.
Yeah.
Imagine that every bird is an individual bird. It has their own personality and their thing going. Try it with ants. Imagine that everyone, that to me helps, to think of each one as an individual, even a collective species like an ant. When I do that, it tricks my mind into curiosity. And gosh, do it with the people around you.
Yeah.
And do it with your own judgments, because you probably will see a video or hear somebody say something that will trigger a reaction. And you'll go, this is all a plot to dethrone Trump, or Trump is the most evil person in the world. And your mind will jump to it and stop and go, what if I go into nuance? What if I wonder if this whole situation is nuanced? And that my mind easily jumps to polarities, and it's kind of been trained by that, trained into that by our culture.
Essentially, we're just a rat in the box then,
we
pressing the button for the food.
And somebody puts a video out and they press the button on you, and you do exactly what they want.
You automatically respond. So, yeah, can you not be the creature that does the automatic response? Can you go, oh, I feel it's happening. It's that automatic pop-up window, and go, okay, there's some conditioning going on there. How can I get out of that? And
see that in ourselves.
Yeah.
And if you think this is all crap that we're talking about, and you do think that the world is completely mechanistic, then here's a challenge for you, which is to use that mechanistic view of the world to make the world cooler and better. Because when you interact with somebody, the way you interact with them is going to enter their mechanisms, the mechanism of their brain, and I don't know if we say cognition, or are we exiting the mechanism thing? I'm not sure. But enter their mechanism and see if you can make them smile, or get them to be curious about the world, or play with it in fun ways instead of letting it run on autopilot. Because so often, if this is all mechanistic, it runs on autopilot for most of us.
Yeah.
And of course, the problem with that is that if you are doing that, we have to stop and say, well, how am I doing that if I'm just mechanistic? But you're probably doing it because I said it, and the whole chain of cause and effect has now led to you.
Oh my gosh, I'm starting to feel so confused.
Is this too much? Okay, we should
this
stop.
This is like the battle of wits in
we
A
should
Princess
stop
Bride. I can therefore not take the wine in front of you, but I know that you are this and you know this, so therefore, I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
all right,
man.
friends. Share your thoughts about this, anything you've played with in this context mentally, and what you think of animals and plants and fungi, and even do inanimate things have. Is there something maybe that we haven't seen there yet? So share your thoughts, your wonderings, your curiosity in the comments. And so much love to you all.
Mwah.